Good evening and welcome to Mindful Live 187. I'm your host Nathan Springer. Thank you for being here. It is the 10th of February. February really feels like it's moving faster than January. If I'm to be very honest, just being forward about it, February feels like it's kind of moving at a faster pace than January. Just putting that out there. This evening we're starting talking about PESH. PESH, PESH, because apparently some people are very concerned about what this whole PESH business is, because recently it was revealed that PESH has been authorized to conduct e-money affairs in Trinidad and Tobago, and Trinis are very concerned about their money. When it comes to money, they're very concerned to know who is dealing with their money, who has authorization, and people are rightfully concerned about e-money in and of itself, because e-money poses some problems. Electronic money, cyber money, online money, cryptocurrency, all of the fintech, financial technologies kind of stuff, all of them pose some new challenges. And not saying that the older technology, not saying that paper money and credit cards and the cards, etc., not saying that they didn't have their own challenges, but this poses some new challenges that people may not yet be accustomed to. So people have a right to be a little apprehensive. I wouldn't blame people for being a bit apprehensive. PESH, a house in St. Augustine. I disagree, sir. I disagree. Let's jump into the article and see if we could find out a bit more of who or what this whole PESH business is. PESH revealed. AZP News speaks with owner. Born and raised in St. Augustine, Trinidad, software developer Simon Fortuné I believe that's Fortuné. I'm seeing a little something on the E there. Simon Fortuné, now living in the United States in the state of Minnesota, founded PESH Money Limited to provide e-money service to local citizens. Founded and registered in 2017, Fortuné describes the company as a small fintech company that finally made a breakthrough with recent authorization by the Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago to conduct e-money transactions. TSCT was also granted permission. He is also making it clear that the company does not provide cryptocurrency. In a social media video being shared, the National Transformation Alliance Director of Youth Progression, Dr. Kevin Saran, raised questions about the company, as nobody ever heard about PESH before. Quoting him, this is a company that will now be transacting millions and possibly billions of our money, so of course we are going to want to know who is this company, he said. AZP News contacted the man and he said it is definitely fair that not many persons in Trinidad and Tobago have heard of PESH, as we are a startup and could not start operations prior to the CBTT Central Bank approval. It was a major milestone we've been working toward for quite a few years now. According to the company's registry of Trinidad and Tobago, its address is listed at St. Augustine, date of incorporation December 27, 2017, with an active status. According to the Central Bank, PESH is a privately owned local company incorporated since 2017. The company aims to provide customers with e-wallets to facilitate the storage of e-money and allow peer-to-peer transfers and payments to merchants in Trinidad and Tobago. In a media release published on Monday, Fortuné gave a historical background of his company. He said, "We landed on the name PESH as it's a Trinbagonian term for money, and it set the direction of how we wanted to develop the company. As a startup, we could not be more excited to achieve this milestone and be one step further to providing digital wallet services to Trinidad and Tobago." The release stated that CBTT's provisional registration enabled PESH to publicly launch its website and social media channels. However, there were additional regulatory requirements the company was now working to meet before launching its mobile app for iOS and Android later in 2023. So the reason TT to US easy conversion don't understand. The reason the company recently started their social media profiles and websites, etc., is because it's only recently gotten the permission. You couldn't have done that before you got the permission. Yes, it's local transactions. What it basically is a wallet. It's an e-wallet for the To summarize it, it's an e-wallet. You take the money that you have in a bank account and you transfer it onto your e-wallet, and from your e-wallet you could send it to other people with e-wallets. You could send it to a doubles man who has an e-wallet, etc. You could do that kind of in between sending, person to person sending of finances. That's the benefit of it. That's the idea. It's not a bank in and of itself. It's an e-wallet basically. According to PESH, the company met with regulators at the central bank in 2018 and learned that a legal framework needed to be put in place for private companies like PESH to issue electronic money. In 2018, the ability to issue electronic money was limited to banks and other financial institutions. And here's the part where I wonder a bit. Encash wasn't doing that well. Here's the thing. Encash is a bank. Encash is from Republic, isn't it? And that's what they were saying. Previously, it was only the bank and financial institutions that had the permission to do those things. And here's where I'm thinking, yes, JRY, you're a little late, but you're here. Here's where I'm thinking about this also. Would you prefer that it was only the banks and financial institutions that could provide these services? Or would you prefer that free market people could create a startup and provide these kind of services once they're able to register and prove themselves legitimate with the central bank? I would wager that the ability to do that is actually a good thing. I would think that's actually a good thing. Kervon says, I understand that they're new, was thinking a company like WePay would be involved. Well, this is the thing with startups, the nature of startups. The guy probably saw a gap in the local market, and he dug into it since 2017. And what you understand is he found out since 2017 that you couldn't do it as just a private company. No. Well, he found out since 2018 actually. And then in August of 2020, the e-money issuer order 2020 became law. That was a bit of legislation that passed. This provided the legal framework for private companies to issue electronic money in TNT, not only for digital wallets, but in place of other physical currencies, such as physical gift cards or coupons. And from there, since the law was passed in 2020, PESH has been in the application process with the regulators at the central bank. So, might it be that the man figured out a niche area that was missing in Trinidad? He is living in the States right now. He is seeing that e-wallet service in the States. What's the one, the Cash App, etc. Things that make sending money so easy and convenient, just like at the snap of a finger. And he's seeing, ooh, Trinidad would benefit from this. And he was thinking that since 2017, registered the company, went to try to figure it out, and then figured out that no, Trinidad's legal framework isn't set up in a way that you can do this. And now he decided, okay, well, I'll have to wait till the legal framework is there. He would be monitoring this because very likely, if he applied since 2018 and found out what was going on, he would have asked the central bank to probably keep him up to date, or he himself would have kept up to date with the progress of legislation regarding the company that he has interest in. So when the legislation finally passes in 2020, as should happen, this is good legislation. This is good. I think this is a beneficial legislation for the country. When it passes, the guy was monitoring it, so he jumps in with the application process since 2020, and now at February 1st, 2023, February 1st, he finally got that approval. And because he is now getting the approval, he said nice. He launched his website, he launched his YouTube channel, etc. And he wasn't able to function since 2017, so he used a family's address in St. Augustine to register the location of the company, because you're not functioning. You're not going to rent out a massive building for 2017, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 7 years. You'd just be renting a random office space and not be conducting business. No. So you register it to a residential address in the meantime. And then when the man finally gets through, because of the length of process, skeptics online make him seem like some kind of political machination working behind the scenes. And he somehow is the big guy that everyone should be afraid of, instead of the banks and financial institutions that always had the permission to do it. Like, some people could make me wonder if they are paid agents of the banks. Are the banks and financial institutions paying you all to spread this about the new upcoming financial options? It would be wonderful if there are more options in the financial landscape that people could leave some of these banks. But no, when the new options come up, they are the ones that people are like, that's a political operative. I don't get it. I honestly don't get it. And I remember I was saying this at the very beginning when I first saw some of this. I was like, I am looking at the questions people are asking about it. And fine, questions make sense. This has to do with money. Questions make a lot of sense. Granted. But I was looking at it, and some of it was beyond question. Some of it was already leaning into a suggestion of a conclusion on the matter. And I'm like, why are people doing this? Like, I read the article when it came out, and I saw that PESH was given the permission. And when we spoke about it, I spoke about it in the angle of, I am very wary about online currency in and of itself and the ability to centrally control people's money, because that's what online currency would allow. And that's the direction I spoke about. But when I'm seeing people imputing certain motives, I'm like, I don't yet see enough evidence to think in that direction. I don't yet see that kind of evidence. The banks have been marginalizing personal banking for a while. I won't be surprised. I won't be surprised if I find out that the banks had a nice little campaign on the low to slander any new upcoming financial institutions, because that's the only people that benefit from it. It's not like, here's the thing. If it was like we could have removed ourselves from the banking sector and we had an option to exit totally and live in that cash only system, then fine, let's bad talk all of them and we leave it. But no, we are being corralled into fewer and fewer banks, and you have to use those banks and that banking system. You have no choice if you want to generally be up to date with the economy as it stands right now. And so if there are less options, it's only the banks stand to benefit from that. So says, I worked online for a few years as a freelancer, and it was difficult to get the cash here. And that's what the guy is hoping to alleviate now. Now, I saw someone in the comments of this article. In the comments, someone had a nice point form breakdown of some of the benefits and ideas behind this. Listen to this. And if you're on YouTube, if you're watching me on YouTube, this is also streaming on YouTube, Nathan Spring over there. You can head over there at any point in time, and the lives are always there. You can always catch them on repeat over there. Head over there and subscribe if you have not subscribed. Nathan Spring on YouTube. All right. Here are some points with this. Chris, I don't know who he is, random commenter on this AZP news website. Chris says, I take it PESH is geared towards smaller transactions. And he was responding because many people in the comments were saying that, thank you, Janelle Trim, thank you. Many people in the comments were saying that this is just online banking. Why can't we just do the online banking that already exists, and you can do online bank transfers through those systems already? So here's what he was answering to that. I take it PESH is geared towards smaller transactions. You can't transfer $12 for 2 doubles to Scotty via online banking. Most banks have a minimum transaction size of $60. PESH is also free per transaction versus an extra $1.50 if Scotty is Scotia and I am RBL. PESH could also, in theory, bring the unbanked onto a digital payments platform. I don't need a bank account to hold PESH cash. Someone else can transfer some to me, and now I'm online. This has some negatives too, though, from anti-money laundering standpoint and smurfing, but PESH admin can also likely view network behavior to flag suspicious transactions and freeze accounts. All right. That's a very good point there too. If you have these wallets that exist here, you don't even necessarily have to be in a bank to necessarily hold PESH cash. You have a wallet, someone with the PESH cash can send it to you, and now you have PESH cash too. Kevon says many young people or folks without two IDs can get access to financial services, and this makes a lot of sense. Now, the point he was making there also is that there's a realm in that where it opens up for money laundering, where it may be a bit harder to track money when it's moving from physical to virtual, then back to physical, and then within virtual it's transferring from person to person to person to person. Money can spin a lot in there. Now, the thing is, to alleviate that, to counter that, the PESH admins, as he was pointing out, would very likely have to have quite a bit of oversight over the network to know and flag suspicious activity. They don't want drug dealing and over PESH per se. How will Racket run though? I is vex. Racket always runs. Trust me, Racket always. We have some articles to get into where you'll see Racket always runs. At the end of the day, the Rackets will run. That sounds like a lot of responsibility for a company that isn't really based here. The man answered that point too. The company is based here. The company is registered here. The CEO of the company is not living in Trinidad, but he's a Trinidad citizen also, I believe. And he said the company has 5 directors, 3 of which live in Trinidad and Tobago. So that's his view on that. And that is PESH. Some other points in that the guy was making. PESH, like all other, like PESH, just now, let me just fix that a bit there. All right, good. PESH, like all others, requires a critical mass to gain legitimacy. No sense me having a PESH account and no one else does. So I see adoption as their #1 hurdle, a la Encash. Also, TT is a relatively small market where it could effectively be a winner-take-all scenario. Don't think we have the volumes to support multiple similar domestic solutions. PESH has the advantage here of being a relative first mover. If the tech is user-friendly and platform well marketed, we'll see if TT is ready for person-to-person digital. I think those were some very good points that guy made there. Random internet guy. And again, looking at this, some of the last points he made there, he's saying that the size of the Trinidad market, it may very well be that Trinidad may not have the room for multiple people in this area. So PESH, being the owner of PESH, getting the idea early was to his benefit. He was able to get out and running early on that. But now you're seeing some roadblocks being put in his place, because at the end of the day, the service that he is giving there needs trust. That what the service will never work if people don't trust it. As the guy was pointing out there, if I have a PESH wallet but no one else has a PESH wallet, then it all makes no sense. I can do nothing with my PESH money. But if everyone has it, then it all makes sense for everyone to have it, and more people will get it. So just the fact that people are throwing up questions about the trustworthiness of the PESH service is already an impediment to him. It would be interesting to see if people throw up these roadblocks towards him, and then you see someone else jump out with a similar idea later, and then they're like, yeah, that's the ideal one, and that would really close that circuit of suspicion. That will really close that circuit of suspicion. When I saw that video, like, for me personally, if you listen to most of what I talk about, the vast majority of what I talk about has to do with public officials and public affairs. There are private companies doing strange things, but private companies are private companies, and that's private business. Also, I'm not even a police officer, so I have no business trying to necessarily go and play law enforcement on private people. To go and interfere with private people's business on the internet is, I think, unwise. I think that's just very unwise. See private people's business and generally stay clear of that. That's the way I see it. It's going to be hell explaining PESH to them market vendors. Not necessarily an RL, not necessarily. Money could be explained pretty easy, and many of those market vendors already have gotten addicted to their phone. Many of them got the hang of WhatsApp very well. So sending money, you think they would know how to send money? The problem wouldn't be explaining it to them. To me, I think the problem might be getting them to trust it. But the idea with it being that it's a wallet that you could load, so it's not necessarily a wallet attached to my entire bank account. I load it up with some money. That would provide a bit more security on the trustworthy side. You know, you could load it with 100 first and see how it goes, and etc. So we'll see. I don't know necessarily if I'll be lining up to be a first PESH customer, but I still think some of the early attacks on PESH may have been a bit premature and unfair. You sign up already? No. I haven't signed up yet. But he hasn't even gotten past the regulations to get his iOS and Android app up and running. That was also in the article. So it's still some time in the future. It's not like something that is happening at this very moment. He got past the first hurdle. There are still further hurdles for him to get over. So we'll see that as it comes out. All right. Let's jump to the next article here. Police service vows to go after criminal Mr. Biggs. Mr. Big is back in the news again. Mr. Big is back in the news again. I don't know how many of you remember Mr. Big. He occasionally he rears his head. Of course, PESH is a choice. That's it at the end of the day. Can you thief PESH money? I mean, if you could hack someone's wallet, I guess you could. If you could trick them into sending it to you, I guess you could. That is because they didn't have a choice. Paper money was not printed anymore. PESH is a choice. Yes, PESH is a choice. Yeah. I don't know how many of you remember Mr. Big. Mr. Big used to be every now and again he raises his head. He makes a news cycle every now and again. Mr. Big. Well, Mr. Big is in the news again. Gray is the only police who was going after Gary, I guess you mean. Well, the new commissioner and her senior staff, the new commissioner and her senior staff are promising that they would also be going after Mr. Big. Mr. Big is well within their scope. Police service vows to go after criminal Mr. Biggs. Mr. Biggs should be worried. Look out, Mr. Biggs. The police are coming after you again. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, under the leadership of its new police commissioner, Earl Harewood Christopher, has vowed to go after the Mr. Biggs in crime, and they are promising the country will see a reduction in crime this month and in the future. Top TTPS members yesterday appeared before the Joint Select Committee on National Security on behalf of the police commissioner, who was unable to attend because she was attending to matters of national security. So the independent Senator Paul Richards noted that the people of TNT are paralyzed with fear and asked whether the police service strategies are really working given the crime data. So the police responded and admitted the approach used by the police in the past has not yielded expected results, but said they have adopted a new paradigm. Here's the thing, right? I like big words. I like to use multi-syllable words and get them long and sophisticated words. I like that too. But there's this ability with longer words for you to say a lot and there be no meaning to what you say. When after it is read, Thanks, Reeve. Thanks. I somehow that reinforcement of what I said, somehow it feels like there's a zing to it, Reeve. I feel moderately offended. Anyway, there's a ability that in all of these words there's no actual value of anything. You don't learn anything from all of these words. So he says that he admitted the approach used by police in the past has not yielded expected results, but said they have adopted a new paradigm. We readily admit that our approach in the past, as is evidenced by the results we are seeing within recent years, they are not as overwhelming or as comforting as we would want. We have re-strategized, and in these strategies are now operationalizing certain key pieces of legislation, because we know with crime and criminality someone benefits, and so with that in mind we are targeting those beneficiaries. And we had a landmark ruling quite recently by the Court of Appeal sometime at the end of January with respect to wealth and explaining your wealth. All right. So the last piece of what he said there refers to the ability the appeals court recently upheld, where the police, the state could seize your assets if the police have reasonable suspicion that they suspect you of gaining your resources, your assets through criminal activity. They could freeze your assets, seize it for some time. I think it's 6 months at a time or something like that. And they're talking. They recently got that upheld in the Court of Appeal, and they're talking about using that to get to the Mr. Biggs, etc., 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 which is grand. But the first piece of that said nothing to me, because he said that their old strategies weren't working, so they re-strategized their strategies, and now they have some new strategies. What are those new strategies? Like, okay, beside the Court of Appeal ruling that literally just happened a week ago, okay, I don't think you re-strategized your entire strategy around a ruling that happened 1 week ago. What were the strategies that weren't working before? And what are the changes to those strategies that you are making now? Because saying that it wasn't working before, so we re-strategize and now we have a plan that will work, kind of tells me nothing really and truly. Even Gary said have some tactics they can't make public. I'm not asking for tactics, you know. Tactics wasn't what I asked for. I asked for strategies. Tactics are different. If you're talking about your specific operations and how you are going to operationalize your operations, no, I don't expect you to say, okay, we're going to do this and that and directly do this. No. But I expect you to say that our focus previously was on, we previously had a more heavy focus on trying to search for illegal guns, but now we are going to look to stop it at the source coming in now. Or previously we were attempting to look for the gang members on the streets, but now we are going to look to build cases based on money mostly now. Like something about the general strategy. You could use general strategies, and that has nothing to do with tipping off the criminals. I mean, the criminals already know that you're after them. Saying that you're going to use a different strategy to catch the criminal isn't tipping them off. They know you're after them. I have no doubt that the criminals might know the inner workings of whatever strategies they re-strategized. The criminals might already know that while they're keeping it a secret from us for some grand reason. Like, no, it's not that deep. It's really not that deep, I think. Who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I am wrong about that. But something very interesting as they went deeper into it. Cameras not working. In response to questions from opposition MP Dr. Rudal Munilal with respect to CCTV cameras, Simon said the number of cameras not working was alarming. He said the police are working with citizens with respect to getting their cameras onto the police database with the assistance of the legal department. This to me shows you the complaint I always, anyone who watches enough of my lives, the complaints I always make about government running things. the government seems to be incapable of it. The government cannot keep their cameras up and working. Well, when I say the government, I'm talking about the police in this case, which is an offshoot of an arm of the state. What they're looking to do now instead is get private citizens who can keep their cameras up and running to somehow attach into their database so the police could get in with that. The thing is, I think that will be more effective because the police wouldn't be good at maintaining their own cameras. They may never be good at it, while private citizens would always be better at it. That's just the reality. And that's an encouragement to privatize more things personally. I think that's what I think about that, and that's the way I see some of that. And we just buy them cameras year before last. Yeah, now listen to some of this. GSC chairman Keith Scotland said he was told the state expended $25 million to purchase 2 scanners to detect firearms in the port, and he doesn't understand why they're not functioning. So let's go into a little article about those scanners and why they're not functioning, and see if we could see what might be a problem with the cameras also. Why it's so difficult for the state to keep some of these things functioning. More than $25 million have been spent on 2 scanners to detect illegal firearms used in criminal activity, but they are not working. This was revealed at a joint select committee meeting on national security that there were technical issues. Attending the meeting from the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service were several officers. Committee members were there. Committee members asked one of the officers about it. Simon responded, they are not working. There are a number of technical issues that I am informed with that equipment. He added, efforts are being made to address that. Now, listen to this, and you'll see something that I regularly talk about also, where you can blame government, yes, you can blame the politicians, but you have to understand the way how the entire system functions. Politicians oftentimes can't even change some of the things that you think they can change. There are other players inside of the system that oftentimes stymie these things. This is the Joint Select Committee. This is a committee in Parliament charged with overseeing national security. And listen to this bit of an exchange. Listen to this exchange. Scotland isn't an opposition MP, right? This man is a government MP. He is in the cabinet. Scotland asked about the cost the state paid for the scanners and was told the cost was more than $25 million. He said, I just do not understand why aren't they functioning. We are trying to pump resources into the police service to make you all more effective, more up to date as a government. What is the solution? Scotland asked. Simon said, I can only relay what I was told, that there are some technical issues with it. The government is sitting with the police service in front of them asking, how do we solve the problem of identifying firearms on our nation's ports? What do you need? Do you need more money? Is it more resources? What exactly do you need about this? And the police says, well, I could only say what I've been told, and there are technical issues. He said he will have to do further checks as it related to the cost, because apart from the equipment's actual cost, there were also maintenance costs, which he asked to be allowed to provide at a later date. Now, can someone tell me if everyone involved with this actually wanted those scanners to work? Do you think they wouldn't have been working? Do you think they wouldn't have been working? What do you mean technical issues? The government is asking you, okay, what are the technical issues here? Is it a fuse blew? Okay, how much money to buy a new fuse? Well, we don't know. It's just technical issues. We'll have to dig into that and get back to you. We'll have to get back to you. And that's the reality. The government could sit there and say, okay, tell me, and ask him to explain himself till they're blue, and he's going to say, well, I could only say what I've heard. I could only say what I've been informed. I wasn't informed on that. Somebody at the top didn't see it as an important to pursue, probably. Well, I don't know if you could say that, because this is the government, this is the parliament, these are the politicians asking the police, what do you need? How do we solve this? How do we solve this problem? What do you need? So the government is at the top, these are the politicians at the top, and they're asking, how do we solve this? And the people who are in charge of executing the policies are the people who insist that they will not have it solved. And you see, the problem is the government, the politicians cannot go into the police service and decide that we're going to start to make changes. No, then people will say they're dictators and they're authoritarian, because that's not in their realm, in their sphere of influence, in their power. That's not the scope of their legal authority. They can't go out there and make things happen in the police service. Their legal position, what they're supposed to do, is provide policy and resources for the police service to run. And as far as they know, they're providing those resources. And the police service, well, this may not be a direct police service issue. There may be many other factors inside there, but whatever other factors there are, it's not up and running. JPS says, who is the employer and who is the employee? Good question. Very good question. Reeves says, I still feel maybe the officers themselves can't use the tools properly. Maybe they're not trained. I'm trying for it to make sense, yes? Well, here's the thing. And this is why when I did that same thing you're doing there in a Reeve, I try to think, I tried to think this through and process this. Okay, what could possibly be the reasons? And nearly every conclusion I come to, it has to be that somewhere along the line, somebody does not want those scanners to work. That's the only conclusion I could come to. Because if they weren't trained, then you would get the note going up the rank, and when the guy sits before the Joint Select Committee, he would say that what is needed is training to use these equipment. The officers that are in charge of using the equipment, they aren't properly trained, and we need a regime of training. We already researched the training scheme. It's a 2-week program. We can invite the trainers over here and we'll train a class of 40. That's how you do it. Unless we get the real info, all you're doing is speculation. Of course, Richard Glubman, of course. That's obviously what we're doing. Obviously. Thanks for pointing that out. Like, we're speculating. We're reading the news and speculating on it. But speculation isn't a horrible thing. Speculation is an... We are required to speculate because we have to use this information to somehow make a decision about who is going to be there to make these choices. So obviously we have to speculate because we aren't being given further information. Like to speculate makes no sense on certain things. Okay, officer. Here's how that sounds like to me. Here's how that sounds like to me. I hire you to do a job. You tell me I cannot tell you how good I'm doing the job. So I have to guess how good you're doing the job. And when I'm guessing how good you're doing the job, you're telling me, no, it's bad for you to guess how good I'm doing the job. So, in other words, I am to stand in ignorance while you tell me that you're doing the best. You're doing the best. While I can see with my eyes and notice with my other senses, I see the bodies dropping. I see AR-15s are now the weapon of choice. I remember 3 years ago, all of the murders were pro pistols. But now, 3 years later, all of the murders and the murder scenes are 5.56 and 7 whatever, long rifle cartridges. What changed over time? Oh, they're no longer working on the port. Oh, why? You can't know that. Just trust us. Trust us. While rifles are flooding the streets, trust us. Some things need to be done with your ignorance. Oh, you mean like nothing? That's how, if you want to do nothing, people being ignorant about you doing nothing is the perfect way for you to do nothing. It's like, convince me you're doing something while more rifles are flooding the streets and the port scanners are not working magically. And the people who are charged, with overseeing this, all you could tell them are technical difficulties. Another body dropped, technical difficulties. More people are dying, technical difficulties. A child murdered, technical difficulties. Or another child and her mother murdered, technical difficulties. And y'all cannot know what we're doing, but just trust us. We're working so hard behind the scenes. Behind the scenes. Here's the deal. If you cannot work to end crime as a police service while keeping the citizens informed, then you're incompetent. That's what you are. We must be able to deduce what's happened from the information available. Is that speculation? Yes, that is speculation. And if you don't have all the information, yes, you can be dead wrong. That's the reality of life, Richard Glubman. What is your point then? Then we can never speak on anything. That is the reality of life. We see limited information. It's literally how our vision works. We don't see all the things that we think we see. We see a limited amount and our brain fills in the rest by basically speculating. I don't understand what is the point you're trying to make here. Okay, we have established humans work by filling in extra information on top of the information that they have. Okay, thank you. So we should never do that. We should only work on the information we have totally in front of us. That's asinine, to be quite honest. No one functions like that. Jean Paul James says, why 1 and 2 and 3 people does be on this live and this man does be talking facts? Well, that's over there on Instagram, Jean Paul James. More people are usually on the TikTok, but good question. If you wonder that, you can share the live. The police executed the guys in the car. It was amazing to see how they blocked the road, and video could be found for weeks. You should start a podcast, Priceless Information. Thank you. Yeah, and it's regularly people employed or people who benefit from the police who always talk this kind of rubbish where, you don't know how much the police work behind the scenes. Like, I am not saying police don't do any work, but don't gaslight the population when the population is seeing what they are seeing. You can't gaslight the population and then on your gaslighting attempt to get the population to trust you more. Yes, we are working really hard behind the scenes. Okay, so why are more firearms on the street? Don't worry about that. We are working really hard. Okay, so why don't you do scanners on the port? We bought scanners on the port. Okay, so why are firearms on the street? Because the scanners aren't working on the port. So why aren't these No, you can't know that too much yet. You're asking too many questions. You'll interfere with the national security matters. But the nation is unsecure. You're interfering with national security matters and the nation is unsecure. That's why I say allow people to get their own firearms and forget about this. I wouldn't question you about what you're doing for national security if I could secure myself. But as long as I can't secure myself, we aren't allowed very readily firearms for personal protection in this country. You are in charge of my protection. You are being paid to protect me, and you're telling me while I am in danger, mind your business. That is ludicrous. the gall the gall of some people. You're being paid to provide a service for me. The service is shoddy, and when I question you on it, you're like, mind your business. Like, that's kind of amazing to me, to be very honest. That's kind of amazing to me. I'm sure licensing officers would say the same thing when asked about when they were talk, because I was reading an article, licensing officers out here, and they're clamping down on offenses at the start of the year here. They're clamping down on offenses at the start of the year here, a lot of roadblocks, a lot of traffic, etc., etc., etc. And I'm listening to licensing officers talk on programs, and they're talking on the television and on the news, and they're talking about the law, and people are breaking the law, and many corrupt people inside, and many corrupt people inside of the and many corrupt people are inside of the inside of those the inspection places. Inside of the inspection places, lots of corruption going, and I'm like, the goal of these men. The goal of these men. That's like when the US military talks about, killing innocent people. It's like the licensing office, the whole licensing division as an entirety is probably one of the most corrupt entities, one of the most corrupt institutions in this country. And they're out here talking about people's fine differences on their vehicle. Fine differences. Like something that if the person was a little wealthier, they would have fixed. Firearms are not suitable for everyone. Even some police should not have personal firearms. I agree. I don't necessarily disagree. But that doesn't change the fact that lots of unfit people already have firearms. It's like, saying that some people shouldn't have firearms is obvious. Again, that's true. But how do we stop them from having it? Can we stop them from having it? If we could, and I always say this, if the police in Trinidad and Tobago, if we could have effectively stopped all the people who shouldn't have firearms from having firearms, then I don't care. Let's all walk around with fists. Not my problem. I'm not necessarily those real gun fans that need to feel the gun and shoot at it in a target range. I don't have that kind of need. At least I don't have it yet. Fine. If you could have stopped all the guns from coming in, I don't need a gun. But don't tell me that some people shouldn't have guns, so for that reason, we won't allow you to have a gun. While the people who shouldn't have guns already have it. What's the purpose of that? What's the purpose of that? All the people who shouldn't, well, not all the people, but a lot of the people who shouldn't have guns already have them. And then the reasoning for the rest of people not getting them is because some people shouldn't have them. Nathan, actually, I'm curious to know your stance on migration. Sorry to digress. Which kind of migration? What do you mean by migration? Do you mean leaving Trinidad and Tobago? That's like leaving the emigration kind of migration? And I think that's a personal choice. I understand why people do it. If it's that you're talking about, I understand why people do it. And I could understand the temptation. The thing is, you have to understand perspective. Many places aren't much better than Trinidad. If we're talking about immigration as in coming in, then I think that should obviously be limited. Leaving TNT, well, yeah, I understand why anyone would do it. I understand why anyone would do it. And I'm not of the view that anyone who leaves Trinidad is unpatriotic or any kind of negative thing like that. But it's understandable. It's understandable because if you feel like you cannot make a change to the nature of this country, and the nature of this country is strangling your life or your family, I could understand wanting to leave it. Perfectly, that's a logical conclusion to make. Now, for me personally, the way I have my personal convictions and my personal worldview may not, at least not yet, point in that direction. And I actually like Trinidad. I think there are some benefits to Trinidad that wouldn't be found outside there. And hopefully I could make some changes to things that I like here. So that's for me, but I understand. Trinidad is actually better than the majority of the world. Unfortunately, very little segregation. That's true. We are better than the majority of the world. I believe everyone who wants to protect themselves and want to be armed should be. I agree. So as a teacher, would you encourage your students to leave? No, I would not encourage my students to leave. No, I will not do that. I wouldn't encourage them either direction. In fact, I might encourage them to stay. And try to build that change that they're talking about, especially if you're talking students. Like, the level of students, I think they're the people most likely to be able to effect change in the future. So if you want to see some difference, you're the person that should stay. The people that I most understand leaving is someone who is 45 and has a family. I understand that leaving. I understand the most, because you're seeing that, okay, I already have a family, I'm just trying to see about the best for my family as it exists now. I'm not looking for necessarily 20 years in the future to help Trinidad. I want my child right now to get a good education. I want my child right now to have a safe surrounding, etc., etc. They're looking for that right now, so that kind of makes sense. But for the young, I could recommend even staying. But I wouldn't judge either way. I just wish we had better services, as you say. Me too. I think that has to do with the culture. That's Trinidad's culture. Unless you have a desired skill that international society wants, you will struggle outside there. I don't actually believe that, Arel. It's according to where you're going, because when people talk about leaving, they're talking Canada, United States, United Kingdom, generally speaking. And in most of those places, the only skill you really need is willingness to work. If you have willingness to work, you're already better than probably 75% of the workforce in many of those places. So the needed skill might be needed to be able to stay. But if you're talking about to make it there somehow, if you get there, I don't actually think that it would be that difficult. I think Trinidadians do not know how to stand up for something they want. Maybe. I think if you're leaving for an opportunity waiting for you, it's good. Leaving to go and fight up is crazy. Yeah, that's crazy. That is crazy, leaving to go and fight up, because you will go and fight up. But if you do fight up, I think you would succeed. Yeah. I was seeing here talking about the nature of how some of these security agencies in this country run. As reading up on some of the stuff the licensing officers were talking about, but there's also an idea for cameras in cars for licensing office. Transport Commissioner Clive Clark says the division is also going ahead with plans to purchase specially outfitted vehicles for driving tests. His statement came 3 months after Works and Transport Minister Rohan Sinanan first announced the plan, which he said would cut down incidents where permit applicants are asked to pay bribes to pass their driving exams. Clark said this phase of the project is a pilot. Once the pilot is successful, we do plan to expand that. About 2 weeks ago, I would have submitted the file to the Permanent Secretary for the tendering process. The request for proposal would have been completed. It would have been submitted for approval, Clark said. He said once it's approved, the procurement department will be charged with putting out tender requests. And I'm reading all of this here on purpose for you to see the bureaucracy that goes on. And all of this bureaucracy is why corruption could get away so easily. So the minister could say that I proposed a plan to cure corruption in the licensing division, and he did. The commissioner of the licensing division could say I put forward the plan to put the cameras in the car to stop corruption, and he did. The permanent secretary could say that I got it and I put it along, and everyone could say they're doing their job. And the amount of different spots along the line that has to go, by the time the cameras reach to the car, it's going to be 3 years down the road, and the cameras would be obsolete, and they would say, well, these cameras can't work. Because here's the thing, even with the cameras, Clark said the division has asked for 4 vehicles equipped with cameras and audio feeds to be provided. Just 4, so we can see how this system works. Once we are comfortable with that, our intent is to make that a revenue stream. Instead of you paying on the outside to use a vehicle, you will be now using our vehicles with that, Clark said. So just 4 to start, as a pilot to start. And then when the 4 work out, then they're going to go back through the whole process to get more of them. Good night. That will never work. Money passing outside the car. Obviously that wouldn't work. We know this, but the intention is, even in the camera system, they don't want that there, because without the camera system, for money to pass out outside the car, that's going to be more difficult. It would be easier to be set up that way. Somebody outside could record you easier. The car has much more privacy to do the deal. So that's why they want the car. They don't want to give up that car deal to be able to have someone. And the corruption in Trinidad is so blatant. It obviously has overseers okay with that, because to have people sitting in a car with an officer and the officer tells you, how come you ain't pay? And there are people who would tell you that that's their experience. That's a boldness of corruption that is seldom seen anywhere else. That's not how they do it. Well, it's not only how they do it. That's not only how they do it. They do it through the driving schools sometimes, but it's not one way they do it. They don't only have one way to collect the money. Collecting money through bribes, if you're doing bribes, I don't think you'll be partial necessarily and only collecting it one way. They pay the instructor, I know. They usually pay through the driving school. But I have seen, well, not seen, I have heard someone's personal experience where the officer asked them how come they didn't pay, because the officer will know. The officer will know who pays or not. Either way, they don't want cameras in there, because cameras will make it all seem a lot more above board. You could see who passes, who doesn't pass, who passes under suspicious conditions, who doesn't pass under suspicious conditions. It will make a lot of things different. They wouldn't want that. It's like similar to the police. The police are still kicking a fuss against their own cameras, the cameras on their outfits. They don't want that also. And you would think this should be obvious. Why wouldn't you want those cameras? It would just make things easier for you. Nope. And the thing is similar, body cameras, yes. The thing is similar to this, what Anthony Williams is saying there. Similar to that, the police are able to turn off the body cameras and move away to do their activities. If they want to do something else, they're able to do that. But the body camera will just be it would be an impediment in them freely doing those things, so they don't even want that. Similar with the cameras inside of the cars. I don't think the licensing division wants those cameras in those cars. They obviously don't. That's a money-making thing. I wonder if it could be calculated how much money is made from that little part of the illegal services in there, what that number would be. And if they're willing to pass bribes for something as simple as passing the licensing test itself, passing the driving test itself, do you think they won't take a bribe for anything else that the licensing office does, that the licensing division does? I mean, yeah. Another bit of trouble in the security forces of late, and this one is a strange one. I find this is a strange one. I don't quite understand why this was made an issue, because it almost surely would always end in this way. Judge blocks prison boss from taking action against bearded officer. For my test, the officer told me the girl before me pay but can't drive, so he had to fail her. You see, I know officers say some of those things. Licensing the truck trailer is the biggest corruption there. I wouldn't doubt that, because that's big money. Not taking bribes to skip a line, I could tell you that. Well, taking bribes to skip a line might be too small money. The money that could be offered to skip lines is too small money, and that one might get them in trouble easier. Bigger money in other areas, you know. Can't be too greedy at the same time. But this is a very interesting story coming out of the prison service here. A High Court judge has granted a stay against the prison service, preventing them from taking disciplinary action against prison officer Arshad Singh. Justice Margaret Mohammed ruled no disciplinary action should be taken until the hearing and determination of his action, or until further order. Singh, through his attorney Imran Khan, filed 2 matters against the prison service, a judicial review, etc., because he's challenging the validity and constitutionality of the prison service order, which prohibits the wearing of a beard. The guy has a big beard because he is wearing it in observation. Wait, let's get the language they use. Proposed disciplinary proceedings will commence as a result of the complainant wearing his beard pursuant to his religious belief and observance and conscience as a devout Muslim. Like, I don't understand what the prison service was doing in this thing, because to me, almost all of those cases go one way. Almost all of those cases go one way. Like, why would the prison service even make a case out of this? This seems nearly again to me, like I was talking about, 90% of what the government does is URP for lawyers. It's URP for lawyers. Why would the prison service try to force a Muslim man to shave his beard and then go to court for that? Like, how do you think that's going to come out in court? Which court is going to rule that you should shave off a religious Muslim's beard? Which court is going to rule that? And let's say you get Trinidadian courts to rule that. The High Court and the Appeal Court. Somehow you get Trinidadian lawyers and Trinidadian justices and judges to go along with that. Somehow. Do you think you're going to go to the United Kingdom in the Privy Council and get those British people to say that it's okay to force a Muslim man to shave his beard? I don't see that. I don't see that pulling through. I just don't see that one pulling through. Amalgamated as bearded officers' religious beliefs. Well, Amalgamated is a private company, as strange as that seems sometimes. But this is the prison service. This is the prison service on a whole. That was. But the thing is, what the man is suing over is not initially that they wanted him to shave it, but that they were bypassing him for promotions based on him having it. They were saying he was disobedient, so he couldn't be promoted because he was refusing to abide by the stipulations of their code or whatever. I find that's just unwise. But that's a good link to a further story dealing with legal matters of a religious nature. Lawyer calls on government bring back families of ISIS fighters. Attorney Nafisa Mohammed on Wednesday called for the return to Trinidad and Tobago of the wives and children of Titi men who became ISIS fighters in Iraq and Syria, saying enough help now exists to reintegrate them into this society. Mohammed said it is the duty of our government to repatriate our citizens. She said from 2013 to 2016, some 130 people left Titi to join ISIS, with most of the men in that group having been killed since. She said 72 children, including 33 born in Syria and 25 women, were now seeking repatriation, saying reintegration in Titi would entail access to documents, medical care, social services and housing, all amid a respect for sexual and gender rights. Mohammed said state agencies and civil society groups were available to assist. These citizens are not terrorists. They are displaced citizens who need the love from all of us. Anthony Williams says, yes, bring the children and women back home. Okay. Why are the men terrorists but the women are not? Can someone explain that to me? How come the men who decide to go are terrorists, but the women who decide to go are not terrorists? Is terrorism a sexist proclivity? How does that work? Why aren't we bringing back any of the men who survived? Why is it only the women and children? Why none of the men who survived? What's the rationale behind that? You say all the men dead, right? No, I did not say all the men died. And that's not what she said. She said with most of the men in that group having been killed since. That's most. Most isn't all. So there may be some men still alive. Why not bring them back? If ISIL was successful and there was earthquake, you would not be hearing about this. Are they still citizens? I'm not sure. This only going to be about 100 people. Anthony Williams says, well, bring the men back, bring the men home too. I see. And what are you going to do with them when we bring them back home? We're just going to bring them back home and they're free to go around society? Or are we going to prosecute them? And then how are we going to prosecute them? On what charges? With what evidence? Based on what evidence? What evidence would there be? So we bring them back and allow them to roam society. Someone who may have murdered 30 people in the desert over on the other side of the world? No count? I don't understand what that means, no count. No count what? Leave them where they willingly went. Yvonne says, imagine if only 3 enjoy making bombs in their spare time. I understand on the children's side, especially on the children's side, I understand that. And no court. So you don't send them to court, you just allow them free. So you just bring them back and allow them to be free in Trinidad and Tobago? That sounds like a good idea. Oh, so you bring them back and send them to court. And right, we send them to court. And what do we prosecute them based on? How would we get any evidence? Who would be the witnesses? Who would be the witnesses of any crime? Or would we prosecute them merely for going over there? And in that case, aren't we doing the same thing that we're doing now? Wouldn't we be doing the same thing then? We're going to be jailing people just for going over there. So it's kind of the same thing. I don't even know how a court case is going to function for something like that. I have no idea how a court case is going to function for something like that. How? How is it going to function? In England, they took away their citizenship. Yeah, I know. They made their choice. The government can't be required to fix their bad choices. Anthony Williams says we put something in place to work with them. What does that mean, Anthony Williams? I don't really understand what that means. How do we work with them? What do you mean work with them? As in counseling to change their lives? And then if that is the case, how come someone could have murdered 30 people on the other side of the world and now they get a counselor to work with them through that, and someone in Trinidad kills one person and they go to jail for life? That doesn't seem fair to me. Leave them there, let them apply for refugee status in a third country. Kilvon says, Reeves says, I remember for a CARICOM meeting a few years back, the Guyana minister called us ISIS country. Well, a good few people from Trinidad did go over to join. A good bit of people did. War is war. What does that mean, Anthony Williams? Could have murdered is speculation. Yes, J. Kettle. That is speculation. That is the point. That's why I said could. That's the thing. You have no way of knowing. So, some of the people there would have been people who never killed anyone. While there may be some there, very likely, because that's what they went over there for. They went over to be fighters for ISIS. They went over to be fighters for ISIS. Yes, K. So there may be the high likelihood of that some of them may be murderers. And if you're saying, okay, well, we'd have to speculate on that, then okay, allow everyone in, and maybe some murderers might come in, but say what, such is life. Is that what we do? I'm not understanding how that is done. I'm not understanding the logistics of this. Anthony Williams says, but for now, let's get those women and children home. Okay, again, why are the men terrorists but the women are not? Are you going to bring the women home and allow them to be free, or are you going to bring the women home and prosecute them? I don't understand why there's an assumption that men would be guilty of crimes, but women would be innocent. Why is there that assumption? And even in the children, what do you do with the children? And what do you do with children who became adults? What do you do with adult children? RL says most of them don't even know why they went there or what they fought for. Stoops equality for all. Anthony Williams says, but you letting murders with of jail every day? I think you mistyped some of that. If you mean I am letting murderers be outside of jail every day, I'm not letting any murderer do anything. That has nothing to do with me. And if you're asking me, or murderers out of jail, if you're asking me my opinion on it, I think murderers shouldn't be let out of jail. If you're a murderer, you shouldn't be let out of jail for a very long time. My question would be, if your opinion is the same that a murderer should be in jail for a very long time, why someone who does murder on the other side of the world should have an exception now? Why would your view of what should happen to a murderer change now with this? And why is the assumption that the women were not terrorists? That's another one. Why is that assumption so? Then adult children. If a child went over at 16, that would have still been a child. But during the time they grew, they got older. And how many years passed since then? I think I saw someone said up to 13 years could have passed. Good night, CM Stickman. Up to 13 years could have passed. 16 to 13, 16 plus 13 is 29. That's a big person. I don't see that as murder. That was war. I see. So, what if the 6 gang guys say they aren't murdering people, it's war? And that is what they call it. They 6 warring the other fellas. ABG in a war with the other fellas. It's war. They're warring. So who determines what we call war in that case? RL says, can't Syria and Iraq charge our citizens and deport them back here at their cost? Why would Syria and Iraq want to do that? Syria and Iraq have too many problems of their own to look into doing that. like okay, it's war. It's war. Why is that war? But what the gangs down here doing isn't war. Why is one the other is war? Who determines what it's called war? Kilvon says it is known that extremists are harbored by family, women, and children. That's true. That is true. Like who determines that? Who determines that? What is war? To protect families in the Ukraine, am I a murderer in a time of war? But that's not what they went to do. They didn't go over there to protect families in Iraq, Syria, or Lebanon. They went over there to bring rulership to the caliphate. If you want to put it into political terms that way, they went over there to support a coup. So it isn't the same as Ukraine. Fighting for ISIS wouldn't be seen the same as fighting for Ukraine. Like, I don't think anyone would have that view. I don't think I've ever met anyone that would share that view. That leaving to go fight for a caliphate that wants to establish itself as a new nation is the same as fighting for Ukraine, which has been a country in that region for hundreds of years. Like, I'm not sure that's the same thing. But I guess it's a matter of perspective. I guess some people's perspective are like that, but I suppose you could throw it out to the country, and you could ask the country what they believe. Would the country stand that these people went over there to fight a war? So even the men, what you're saying there, by what you're saying there, by what you're saying there, by what you're saying there, the men should be allowed to, because they were at a war. So, come back home, men. Come back home, men. We understand you went out there to fight a war, bro. No scene. I mean, like, I don't know. So, like, for me, those are some of my questions when I see that. They say bring the women and children back home. Okay, what's the logical reason for it not being the men? why are the women not seen as terrorists too? And when you say children, what do you mean? Do you mean only underage children? What about adult children? I don't doubt that there may be a 26-year-old who went there as a child and they didn't go there of their own will, so they may actually be a victim in this process. So should we bring them back too? Or I wouldn't doubt that there may be another 26-year-old child who went there and believed in the movement they went there for and has some of that belief still and is going to still try to push that belief now. Again, for now, let's put the woman like Anthony Williams. We've gone through that discussion, and in the cycle, it just doesn't make sense. Children easier to radicalize. Yes, they are, and that's part of the problem with the problem with ISIL and ISIS and IS. It's not like a war where it's Ukraine and Russia. It's a war where it's Nazis, as there are some Nazis in Ukraine, to be honest. Like, it's Nazis versus another group. So there's an ideological component to it. There's an ideological component to it. I don't even understand where you're going with that. There's an ideological component to it where there is radicalization. I don't know how many of you remember what it was like during when ISIS was at its heyday. There were people being radicalized in cities in the United States and going from there to try and do acts in the name of ISIS. And I don't know, do you believe that the ideology is totally gone? Or is it possible that some of the people there could still have the ideology? And yes, it's speculation, as everyone says, because that's the nature of what we do. And it would be people speculating that decide whether... It would be people speculating that make you decide whether you come home or not. But the speculation there, you have to speculate about the likelihood of putting your general country in danger. They interpret the canon literally and went to implement violently. Yes, that is true. That is true. And the children side, as I said, even the children, bringing home the children is dicey. The thing is, the world is full of some just cruel realities. The world is full of cruel realities. I'm not sure how you solve that one. I'm not sure how you solve that one. Because I don't think bringing them all back to Trinidad, just all at once bringing them back, is going to be a good idea. Kalimo, I don't think that's going to be a good idea. And then the next thing is, a lot of them, if they come back to Trinidad, they may be in a position of less income, lower income. So you're putting them back after having a hard life into another struggling environment. Like, that sounds like a recipe for some disaster. With the right people who believed in me changed my thinking. Position of influence to others. Jay Cattell says, I think we bring everyone home, interrogate them all, and figure it out when they get here. How are you going to interrogate them? Like people lie. Are you going to subject them all to intense advanced interrogation methods? I don't think the World Human Rights Council and those guys would take too kindly to that. I don't think they would take too kindly to that. So how are you going to interrogate them to find that out? They may feel marginalized by the country and want to take out revenge. That's possible too. So I don't know if interrogating them would work. Like, I'm not sure that's how you're going to get the answers out of that. Hey, do you still believe in radical terrorism, and do you still believe in the caliphate is the rightful established rule of this world? No, just questions. The burden of proof is on the state. Oh, Jay Cattell. So you bring them back. and put them to a normal court case where the state has to prove that I killed somebody now. And if the state cannot prove it, then they're free in the society. Jay Cattell, are you serious or are you trolling too? You have to be trolling too. Like, I'm trying to find someone who wants to bring them back but has a reasonable stance on this. Just bringing back people who may possibly be murderers and leaving them there, you're not being serious about that. Like, you're not taking a serious stance on it. Hey, speaking of human rights, we're still in hot water for the death penalty. Yeah, we are. But that death penalty is would always be a stickler because the highest court in our land is in the United Kingdom and they don't believe in death penalty. So if you reach to the highest court, yeah, so that death penalty is always going to be a struggle here. The question is, did they break any laws? No, that's not the question actually, Jay Cattell. The question is, would bringing these people back to Trinidad put Trinidad in more danger? That is the question. That is all the question. Did they break any laws? That's irrelevant. They went into another country. Did they? So you're saying that if I go to Papua New Guinea and assault 3/4 of their population, murder the rest, and come back to Trinidad, welcome me, and it's fine because I broke no laws here? I don't understand that process. You're thinking of this, Jay Cattell, you're sounding like you're thinking about this, like you're putting yourself in their position and you're trying to find a loophole to let yourself back in. But I'm talking about this as putting yourself in the position of someone living here or someone who has to make the decision on behalf of this country. If you're thinking on behalf of this country, what is best for this country? Would bringing them back be best for this country? IceB says they are a national security risk. I choose the many over the unpatriotic criminals. Francis Sylvester, the legend, says, good night. I just joined. What's the topic? This topic we are currently covering is the request to repatriate the women and children from ISIS. The brides and children of men who went to fight for ISIS, if we should bring them back home. Lawyer was recently saying that we should. It's a good thing. We should bring them back home. Kurt42 says the mental aspect is very concerning. They kill 100 human beings, come back home and live normal. You don't live normal after that. No one lives normal after that. That's the thing. That is the thing. Right? I want people to think about it seriously. Don't think about it like, I thinking about it like, if I was one of them and I went over there and I fight and I tried to figure out a loop. No, think about it seriously. Like, you're trying to figure out what would be best for this country. You're thinking about this on a countrywide basis. What would benefit the country? The law, Jay Cattell, you're not listening to me. You do, if you don't want to be a part of the discussion, that's fine. But I'm directing you on how to think about it a bit. It's not about the law because obviously the law doesn't have precedent here. That's the whole point. That's what everyone is talking about. We have to make it up. Listen, like that. What does the law say? That's such a kind of slave colonial mentality. Like, you could only exist in a place where there are already laws. What happens if you go to a place and there aren't laws yet? You have to be the one in charge of setting up the legal system of this place. Can you think as a moral human being? Can you make the decisions based on that? What would be best is that they stay there. Thank you, Jay Cattell. Anthony Williams says, look, I want the women and children home. I would bring them home. All right, you want them home, you would bring them home. Why do you want them home, Anthony Williams? Why? Why is that? Have them come home and on house arrest. The thing is, if you have them, and I think they tried some of that in the United Kingdom and in Canada, once they reach here, how you deal with them would be under the bounds of our legal system. So if you bring them here and place them under house arrest, they very likely will file a judicial review. For what grounds are they under house arrest on? And would you be able to present the evidence to prove the reason you have them under house arrest? Anthony Williams says they are citizens. So your view, Anthony Williams, is regardless of what a citizen does, it is irrelevant. Once they are a citizen and they want to come back to Trinidad, Trinidad as a whole should pay for them to bring them back and bring them back to Trinidad. I'm trying to figure out what is your view on this. Not your singular view on this one topic. I'm looking for your general rule on these things. What would your general rule on these things be? Once someone is a Trinidadian citizen, regardless of what they have done anywhere in the world, we bring them back here. We bring them back here and we free them. I'm asking you a question, Anthony Williams. Are you a troll or are you in the discussion? Which one are you? I remember, wasn't it you was asking me about joining a political party or something of the such? Are you trolling or are you in a serious discussion here? Kevin says, I think if we don't have a president, we need to use common sense. Empress Ronnie says he must have a sister out there. RL says bring Jack Warner back home. Anthony Williams says, can you tell me how much people those children kill? Anthony Williams, you are not answering my question. You are going off on tangents, sir. Can you answer the question? If you would like to have a discussion, if you would want to troll, you can let me know and I'll ignore you in the chat. We could mute you even. But if you want to have the discussion, is it that you're saying, regardless of what anyone does, once they're a Trinidadian citizen, we bring them back? Is that what you're saying? Is that your stance? Regardless of anything anyone does, once they're a Trinidadian citizen, we bring them back. I don't actually think that's your stance. And that's the problem many people have. When you're trying to make decisions, if you're trying to think of and trying to be someone in a position of responsibility, you have to think about the decisions that are going to come as a consequence of this decision you make. So, okay, we bring them back. Under what grounds? How are we going to deal with them when they come back? J. Cattell says we don't know what they did. That is the thing. Exactly, J. Cattell. Exactly. you said it. That is the thing. We don't know what they did. And if they are currently outside of Trinidad, whatever they did, we could not be concerned about it. But if they come to Trinidad, what they did becomes very much our concern. And there's nearly no way to figure out in hindsight what they actually did. There's no way. There's no evidence for it. The only thing that we can be sure that they did, the only thing we can be sure is that they left the country. So here's how, if I had to make, could find out about what? If I had to make a decision on this, here's how I might have tried to do this. Anyone who willingly went over, you can't come back. I'd consider you to have committed treason. That's the way I'd phrase it. You committed treason. You went to fight for a hostile foreign country, so you committed treason. You can't come back. Anyone who willingly left. That leaves only the people who are underage. The people who are underage, who are Trinidadian citizens, and who are willing to leave their family, because you'd have to leave the family that is there who decided to leave Trinidad, you'd have to leave them over there. The number of people that left Trinidad, the official number is 130. Kurt, 42, 130. So, if you're willing to leave your family there, we may repatriate you. The authorities over there, through my investigations, have case-by-case files on these peoples. That's a lie, Anthony Williams. That's not true, because in the United Kingdom they're talking about the same thing too, and there's no way to know. Do you think ISIS kept a record of every ISIS militant killed? They have a record of people's names and their country of origin. They have a case file on the people in terms of that. But they don't have a case file on the people in terms of the crimes they committed. There would be no way for them to have that. The only way they would have that is for the people to implicate themselves. And you do understand people don't generally implicate themselves. So when they're taking down the case file, they're like, okay, country of origin Trinidad and Tobago. I know you're talking about in Syria in the refugee camps, and this is how they would be taking that information. Okay, country of origin Trinidad and Tobago. What's your name? Da 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 da. Sex. Okay. And how many people did you kill under ISIS? None. Oh, none. Okay, strange. You know, all of the refugees we found so far for the day say they've killed no one. That's so strange. Like, how are they going to find that information, Anthony Williams? Of course, they would their case file would be incomplete. There's no way to have that information unless you had drones observing every single ISIS fighter. They have a case file if they are important high-ranking terrorists. I doubt our citizens were any. They were in security detention facilities before the camps. Yes, I am saying they have case files on the refugees, as in their name and country of origin, etc. But there's no way for the case file to have whatever crimes they committed. So it would be the same problem that what was their name before J. Cattell was pointing out, that it would be the same problem that we have no idea what they did. There's no way for us to know what they did. And that's the problem. We can't prosecute them for what they did because we don't know. But we know that there's a high likelihood they may have done something. So as I said, anyone who left our country to go fight for a hostile foreign power, you committed treason. You can't come. How do I know what? How do I know what, Anthony Williams, that it's very likely they committed crimes? Because they fought for ISIS. Like, what kind of question is that? What kind of question is that? How do I know? Right, yeah. So if you left and you willingly left to go fight for a foreign power, that's treason in my book. You can't come back. The children, if they're willing to leave the parents there or the parent there, maybe they come back, and them, that generation, maybe we could work on that generation. Francis the legend says, as a result of outside influence, crime has gotten out of hand. Bringing them back is another risk. Yes, that would be a massive risk. I don't understand it. And so far, no one in the chat over here on TikTok, and well, the chat isn't that busy over there on Instagram. No one in you think terrorists went to plant garden? No, I haven't seen anyone in the chat yet posit a reasonable reason for that. Like, give me something reasonable. Okay, bring back the women and children. Why not the men? What makes the men terrorists and the women aren't terrorists? Like, what's the logical basis of that? I believe the children should be free to come back, CM Stickman says. Anthony Williams says, do you know what the Syrians have foreign fighter? Do you know that the Syrians have foreign fighters, ex-Syrian soldiers in this country? Doing what? I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about in terms of ex-Syrian soldiers who came to vacation in Trinidad and Tobago, if that's so okay. Do you mean training somebody? I don't know. What's the relevance of that? Sorry? The relevance of that. I don't know what's the relevance of that. In terms of ISIS fighters. Like, Anthony Williams, you considered ISIS you seem like you considered ISIS to be, a bona fide, legitimate organization, which sounds shaky, personally. Sounds very shaky. I find that irrelevant information. I kind of do too. All right. That's all I have for now, folks. Are there any further comments or questions before I dive out? Security protection, but yet it is okay. What? I still don't understand the relevance of that. So ex-military can come to our country. Yes, they can. Former terrorists cannot. No, they cannot. Like, that seems pretty simple to me. None should return. Just keep the few good Spanish that Why did I read that out loud? All right. Thank you, folks, for tuning in. That's all I have for now. I hope you educated, informed, or entertained. Nathan, your neighbors was real loud tonight. Yes, bro. Yeah, bro. The music's still playing. I don't know if you all hearing that. The music's still playing all this hour. The party goes down late. Fix that next. Oh, I fixing that, bro. You looking for bacchanal in the neighborhood. I like to live good with the people. I live good with my neighbors. You understand? You come and you talk to my neighbors and you ask them about Nathan and you hear good things. 130 Trinidad citizens left the country, trained in firearm use, 9mm rifle shotguns, people. The United States looks upon Syria as an enemy. That's good for the United States. But I don't think they are listed as an active enemy like that. Welcome to Carib Countries Friday. All right. I hope you educated, informed, or entertained, and I will see you guys again for the next Mindful Live, which is going to be Monday. We don't do the Mindful Live on weekends. I'm thinking about starting a Mindful Education Live one day on the weekend. I'm yet to decide which day, and it will be educational in nature, where you can ask questions and we'll be answering questions. So mostly for school children, obviously. We'll see what age group we may focus in, if it's going to be just live and the questions there, or get some questions before and go over the questions on a live and get the younger persons to jump in. Nice for having you here, Jay Cattell, and nice for adding to the conversation. This was all brought to you also by Mindful Education, Mindful_education, Mindful with 2 L's _education if you're looking for us over on Instagram. That's the educational institution and service that I run. We offer learning pods from preschool all the way up to CXC levels. We also offer private tutoring for more CXC and CAPE subjects. If you are interested in those, hit us up and get a tutor or join a class. Laters, folks, hold it on, be safe. The weekend come. Don't go and get yourself in trouble on this lovely weekend. But it's okay for Syrian soldiers who are seen as terrorists by the United States to enter our country. I don't think they are called terrorists to be a Syrian soldier. It's not the same. The United States sees Russia as now it's a little different, but like China is kind of a US enemy, and they don't consider Chinese soldiers to be terrorists. It's not the same thing. Peace out. Laters, folks. Hold it down. Anthony Williams, you sound like you're doing apologism for terrorism, sir. That sounds fishy, bro. It sounds a little